technically failed the Darren Shan-othon, but I still somehow managed to read 31 books this month. Hi, it's Jade, and it's currently the 31st of October, which means it's Halloween. I know that it will very much not be the 31st of October when this gets uploaded, but just thought I don't know, mention that for some reason. Just a little bit of a quick update. I am participating in NaNoWriMo for November, which is the reason why I haven't done a November TBR, because I'm going to be spending pretty much all of my spare time writing. There are a couple of books that I want to read this month, but I'm also putting like zero pressure on myself to read, because I don't know, I may read one book, I may read none, I have no idea. So I'm not doing a TBR game for November. If you're anticipating that video, it's not happening. I am trying to like backfilm a whole bunch of videos, so if you see me in the same outfit multiple videos in a row, well, one, I just don't own that many clothes, so it could be that I have actually filmed those on separate days. But it's most likely that I've just bulk filmed a bunch of videos and they're like being uploaded once a week over the course of November. That aside, let's get to the plethora of books that I read this month. As a bit of a change from, I don't know, tradition. Can you have a tradition when I think I've done like 3 wrap-up videos so far? Anyway, I'm not going to start with the audiobooks I listened to. Instead, I'm going to start with the books that I read for the Darren Shan-othon, because I'm just going to briefly talk about the ones that I made reading vlogs about and then like move on. So the first 12 books I read were the 12 books in the Saga of Darren Shan. There is a reading vlog of me completing this series. I apologise that the lighting in it was absolutely terrible, and I think there's one point where I'm talking and you just can't even see my face, but you know, it was it was my first ever reading vlog, so I mean, it was bad. As I made an entire video on that, I'm not really going to go into what it's about or anything like that. Overall, it was a 4-star series for me. It was a reread and I still really enjoyed it. The next 10 books I read were, oh god, these are so heavy, the Demonata series. Once again, there is another reading vlog for that, so I'm not going to go into what it's about or anything like that. This one was, I don't know, 3-star series overall. I was getting tired of it by the end, and it wasn't as pleasurable a reread as I had anticipated, but more information in another really terribly lighted and filmed reading vlog, if you would like to go and see that. After that, I read The Thin Executioner by Darren Shan. This one, I can't remember what I rated it. I think it was a 4-star. I think, especially after the Demonata series where I was getting really tired, I really enjoyed this one. This one is about a boy named Jebel Rum, who is the son of their town's local executioner. In this universe and in his like kingdom, executioners are very highly valued. They're like second only really to the chief of that town. And Jebel wants to take his father's mantle, even though he's like the youngest and the skinniest of all of the executioner's children. And one day the executioner announces that he's going to be retiring in a year, and as tradition dictates, there will be like a contest of strength and agility and everything to determine who the next executioner is. And he names his 2 eldest sons as people who will be competing for that role, and completely ignores Jebel. And Jebel sees this as the slight it is, because there is a lot about like honour and everything in this society, but your honour is bound to how strong you are and how much like respect you can get from other people. It's not really bound by anything to do with like kindness or anything like that. So he decides to reclaim his honour. He is going to go on a pilgrimage to a mountain where these people believe their god lives, and then petition the god to give him basically immortality and great strength. to do this, he has to sacrifice someone to that god. So he takes a slave with him, and the story is basically their pilgrimage, and it's a great allegory for how small-minded and bigoted individuals can learn and expand their worldview by getting out of the small town that they've grown up in and realising that their way of life isn't the only way of living. And the friendship that develops between Jebel and Tel Hassani, who is the slave, is really nice, and the whole thing is just so good that you see Jebel slowly realising and expanding his worldview and everything. And there are two great characters in this that does kind of date the book, so you know when it was written, but there are two like con artists in it called Master Bush and Master Blair, and I just I just love it so much. After that, I read the 4 books in the Saga of Lartin Crepsley. This is a prequel to the Saga of Darren Shan. And just like the Saga of Darren Shan, I really enjoyed this one. It was published quite a few years after the Saga of Darren Shan, and you can definitely tell how Darren Shan's writing progressed between the two, considering they're set in the exact same universe, and you have some of the same characters and everything. The Saga of Lartin Crepsley had managed to get rid of a bunch of the things that really annoyed me in the Saga of Darren Shan, and also in the Demon Art series, which is, if you watch those reading vlogs, are just the sheer amount of repetition that he does, and the fact that each book starts with a recap of what has happened in the story so far. These didn't do that. They covered a much longer time period than the Darren Shan saga did, because when we meet Lartin Crepsley in the Saga of Darren Shan, he's nearly 200 years old. He's a vampire, by the way. The Saga of Darren Shan is about vampires, and so is the Saga of Lartin Crepsley. And it's a great way of giving more backstory to a very important character in Darren Shan saga, who I think was quite a fan favourite as it was being published anyway, so we learn more about him and a bunch more about other characters that we met along the way in the Saga of Darren Shan. We get their backstory and everything, and yeah, it's just really interesting because it focuses on, like I said, a longer time period. When Lartin Crepsley is turned into a vampire, it's early 1800s maybe? Mid 1800s, so we go through the turn of the century, World War One, World War Two, different inventions and everything, and how vampirism, or the vampire culture, sort of stays as remarkably the same over centuries. But there are aspects of it that have changed between this saga and the new one, and it was nice to see that, because no culture is going to stay exactly the same for that entire time. I'm getting paranoid by how long I'm filming, because the last video I filmed where my camera shut off and I had to turn it back on again, the entire second bit of it was just so blurry. I'm such a good YouTuber. The last book of Darren Shan-othon that I actually read, which means that I only missed 2 books, but there was a reason, and that was the first in the City series, which was Procession of the Dead, and I just really didn't want to read it after 2-3 chapters, which has, if I didn't want to reread it, why is it still in my house? So they are on my unhaul pile now, all 3 of them. The City series is an urban fantasy. It's an adult fantasy that's very gangster focused, which I think is why I just don't care, because gangster stories are not my cup of tea at all. There is a magical realism sort of undercurrent in this, and I know that there was a couple of twists, but I can't remember what they are, and I don't care enough to find out. So I'm not going to go into much detail about this series. The last physical book I read for the month of October, I've considering this is the most amount of books I've read in a month since starting this channel, I have blitzed through this. This is going to be a really short video. The last physical book I read was the October book club pick, and that is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. And, I mean, it's not very long, but I finished this in like 2 hours or something, and I instantly gave it a 5-star. I'm so happy that another one is coming out. I'm not as happy that I have to wait until June of next year for it, but instant 5-star, because I will always give 5 stars to books where I will finish them and just be like, what do I do now, like, with my life? And that happened with Lord of the Rings, with The Starless Sea, with A Little Life. It was like different reasons why I had that reaction, but this entire book is like a warm bath or a nice cup of tea. It is so lovely and so reassuring. I should probably give you a synopsis of the plot rather than just gushing about how beautiful it was. A Psalm for the Wild Built is set in a future where robots have at some point in the past become self-aware. No one knows why it happened. It just, one day, all of the robots suddenly became self-aware. And not wanting to keep them as like slaves or anything like that, now that they knew that they had like they were self-aware and they had thoughts and feelings and all that stuff, humanity allowed the robots to leave them. And all of the robots disappeared into the wilds and just said, okay, well, we just want some time away from you to figure out who we are, how we want to deal with this. We may come back a little while later, we may not. Meh. And then an indeterminable amount of time later, I don't think there was a specific time period, we meet a character called Sibling Dex, who is a tea monk. And they serve the god of small comforts, who, by the way, this is like my new religion. I want to be a tea monk and I want to serve the god of small comforts because it sounds so nice. But Sibling Dex is a travelling tea monk, and they go through like all of the little satellite towns around the big main city of this world. By the way, this is an Earth. This is a moon, an unnamed moon that humanity has like settled on. And there is one big city called The City, and there's little satellite towns. So Sibling Dex travels around these towns, and it's hard to describe what a tea monk does other than they make tea for people and they make them feel better. So basically they set up, in a town, they set up a stall, people come and tell Sibling Dex their problems. Dex listens to them, makes them a cup of tea that will help, and lets them like sit down, have their tea, or take it away with them, whatever. And the tea is almost like not a front, because it does kind of help, and they have a bunch of different herbs and things that they know will help, like if someone's not sleeping very well, someone's just super stressed. But you see through a couple of their interactions that it's a lot of the time people come up and they just need to unload, and as soon as they're given this cup of tea and told, go and sit down, drink the tea for as long as it takes you, take a load off, it's like they've just then been given permission to rest for a time, and that is Dex's job, is to help these people rest and recuperate and feel better and work through their problems. Can you see why this would be like the best job ever? I love it. But anyway, one day, Dex is starting to feel a little bit like restless because they're worried that the path they've chosen in life is not their true purpose. They enjoy it, they love what they do, but they're just very tired because they've been doing the same thing for a couple of years. So they like go off their usual track for a bit just to have some like me time, and they come across a robot who's just like come out of the woods, who by the way is also just like the most curious happy being ever. The robot's name is Moscap, and it like stumbles into Dex's camp. It's like, a human, hello! And basically Moscap has been sent by like the robot clan to go into the human settlements and ask them what it is that they need and if the robots can help, because they're thinking about rejoining humanity again. And so Moscap asks if it can follow Dex around learning about what humans need, and Dex is like, well, I'm not going back to civilization for a while. I need to go and find this little hermitage in the middle of the wilds because I just need to. It's like a burning need in them. So Moscap decides to help, and it's about like their friendship and the like sort of philosophical conversations they have with each other, and some of the conversations, it just makes you feel like, yes, humanity isn't born with an ingrained purpose. No one has something they were born to do. There are certain people that find something that can like consume their entire life and it makes them happy to do that. But the fact that you don't necessarily know what you want to do with the rest of your life isn't a failure on your part. It's part of the human condition. And you can do 100 different things in your life. You don't have to choose one thing. And if you do choose one thing and it doesn't give you everything, that's not your fault. That's just like kind of what it is. And and I just can't wait for the next one to come out, and I know that I'm going to reread this so many times. And also, perfect like month for us to read this, because look how like autumnal this cover is. It's so pretty. And on that note, I'm going to drink my tea. And finally, I listened to 2 audiobooks this month. The first one was Release by Patrick Ness. I gave this one 3 stars. I did enjoy it. And I love Patrick Ness. His book, The Rest of Us Just Live Here, is one that I've been itching to reread recently, and I absolutely loved it. Ooh. And his what's the series called? His Chaos Walking series was really good as well. I haven't watched the movie because it looks ridiculous. Maybe I will, but I am not expecting good things from that film. Anyway, the story of Release. Release is one of those books that takes place in the span of just one day. And it follows 2 people. I say that like that because it's hard to describe what the second, like, POV is. First POV is following a young man called Adam. I don't know what you call, like, 17-year-olds. Because, in my mind, that's child. Child, but not small child. So young adult, young man. Anyway, called Adam, who is having a day. It's one of those things where his, like, first love is leaving. And even though he's been, like, trying to get over him for a long time, he has a new boyfriend who is like, everything is saying that I should love my new boyfriend. I forgot the name of. Anyway. And the more he's thinking about it, the more he's like, his first love didn't really, like, treat him all that well and all that stuff. And he's also having to deal with the fact that he is a young gay boy in Southern America, and his father is an evangelical pastor in one of those, like, big mega churches. So it's like, it's very much not ideal. And he, like, all he wants is basically to leave this town and not have to deal with all of these issues, but things are piling on top of him. Like, he hasn't come out to his parents, even though he knows that they know, because he's like, what's the point? 1, they know. 2, they made it very clear that they're not supportive. And, like, yeah. He's being, like, harassed by his boss, who has made it very clear that if he wants to keep his job, he's going to have to sleep with him. And he's like, 1, I am 17, 2, you are gross, and 3, what the fuck. 3, childhood love is leaving, doesn't seem to give a shit. And what's the the 4th one, his brother has gotten a girl pregnant, and his parents are, like, less annoyed about that than they are about the fact that Adam is kind of gay. Very, very gay, but, you know, the fact that Adam is, like, not the perfect son. So he's just, everything is going wrong. And then on the other POV is the spirit of a murdered girl has been given 24 hours to, like, walk the earth. And sort of so, like, her soul can rest at peace. But as she's doing that, she, like, attaches to this spirit that was never given a name, but from what I can gather is almost like Mother Earth and is basically the queen of all of these fae beings. And it's how, like, their lives are almost, like, paralleling with each other, and just as the spirit comes to peace and gets her release, Adam also kind of, like, comes to peace with himself and his life, and basically decides that he's not gonna just put up with the shit that he's had to put up with anymore. It was good. It was good. I think I was quite distracted by the fact that it was read by the same guy that did the audiobook for Love, Simon. So I couldn't, because I listened to them, like, consecutively, I couldn't really separate the two characters all that well. And the last book I listened to was In Order to Live by Yanomi Park. I know I haven't pronounced that right because I've been listening to the audiobook where her name is said multiple times and it just didn't come out right. Yanomi Park. Anyway, this is a memoir. Wow. In Order to Live is a memoir by Yanomi Park who escaped North Korea. And it's about her life growing up in North Korea, escaping to China, being trafficked as, like, a child slave in China, managing to escape that into South Korea, and then finally accepting and telling her story and becoming, like, a voice of North Korean defectors. And it is just as harrowing as you can imagine from that description. Some of the stuff about North Korea I kind of already knew from, like, watching documentaries and things. There was a lot of misinformation that she managed to, like, put to rest that this is not the case, or yes, what you heard is true, even though that's insane. And there's a lot of talk about how indoctrination, like, works on people, especially when you are born into it. And it's just very eloquently written, and none of it is done for shock value, even though her life has been incredibly shocking. It's just, this is what happened to me, and I want to talk about it now. And I gave it a 4 star? I've read so many things this month that I can't remember what the hell I rated them. 4 stars, yes. Not quite sure why it wasn't a 5 star. I find memoirs really hard to rate. Really. But yes, that is all of the books that I read this month. I don't know what else to say, other than... what do I normally say at the end of these ones? Have you read any of the books that I talked about? Did you like them? Did you not like them? I mean, there was none here other than the Procession of the Dead that I, like, didn't enjoy. And yes, I am looking forward to a more relaxed reading month, I have to say, even though it won't be relaxed in any other way. But yes, I will see you in the next video. Bye.